Wow. That feels so slow.
Hey guys, it's Vas here from Aussie RC Playground and welcome to my review of the Tower Hobbies Cutback. Now this is a 1/10 scale 4-wheel drive brushless short course truck available exclusively from Tower Hobbies. The truck comes equipped with a 3600 kV 4-pole brushless motor and a waterproof 80 amp ESC. For steering, we have a self-branded Tower Hobbies steering servo up the front, which actually didn't do a bad job at all. Okay, so the Tower Hobbies Cutback, is this a worthwhile purchase? Is it worth the $299 price tag as advertised at Tower Hobbies? Mind you, that is at US dollars as well. I'm going to answer this question very quickly here for you, and I'm going to say no, it's not. I think that this truck is riddled with way too many problems, and unfortunately it fell a little bit short of the mark when compared to some of the other short course trucks that I've tested in the past and I'm still currently testing, such as the Pro SC that you see behind me. Now, before we get stuck into all the negatives of this truck, I'm going to point out some of the positives, give you some insight as to what would sort of sway people to buy this truck at first glance, because on paper it does look very, very good. It has an 80 amp ESC, it has a 4-pole brushless motor, all good things. You know, it's from Tower Hobbies. It's $299, which in a way, it's actually a reasonable price. It's a good starting point to get anybody into the hobby. So it's kind of aimed at that entry level kind of market or customer demographic. And you know, it comes pretty much ready to go. You just need to supply your own batteries and charger and you're up and going. So one of the reasons why people would actually buy this truck is because Tower Hobbies are offering a 12-month warranty on their plastic parts. Now, if you're a Super Saver Club member, you actually get that extended for 2 years. And what that means is that if you do break a plastic component on the truck, you can send it back to Tower Hobbies, and of course they'll replace it for you free of charge. Now, for somebody like me that's in Australia, it's on the other side of the world, to ship even a plastic A-arm, it would cost me a fair bit of money. And it's really, you know, even if it may be a little bit cheaper to do that than to actually buy a new one, I may as well buy a new one. They usually come in pairs anyway. You know, add that to a couple of other bits and pieces that I may want for some of my other RCs, and it kind of really defeats the purpose of sending something back to get something for free. I find it hard to believe that you have to actually send the part back. I don't quite understand why you can't take photos, do a Skype call or something like that would, you know, prevent people from having to send parts in. So I don't quite know what Tower Hobbies want with the broken parts. Maybe they want to analyze them, or I'm not quite sure. But anyway, that is the rules, and these are the circumstances that I'm in. Not really beneficial for somebody like me on this side of the world. However, for everybody else that has access to this truck and wants to take advantage of that warranty, you know, strap yourselves in, because there's going to be quite a few other things that you need to be aware of before you think that that's the best thing about this truck. We're going to move on to the remote very quickly. I have reviewed this remote a few times in the past. There is no issues with this remote. It's sold across a variety of different vehicles. Armour currently are selling this with a lot of their ready-to-run vehicles as well. Axial have them. There's really no problem with this remote. It has a good feel in the hand, it's well balanced, runs on 4 AA's, good range, collapsible antenna, drop-down wheel, and of course you have some trimmings on the back here as well. It is fairly basic as far as features go, but it should serve you well and you shouldn't have any problems at all. Now, another thing that I'm going to say is actually a decent setup on this truck is the electronics. Now, if you watch Rich from the RC Network, he said that he didn't like the electronics on the truck. I have to partially agree with him, because the ESC throttle curve on 3S is just ridiculous. You can't drive this truck off-road or even try to race it on 3S. The settings on that ESC are completely botched. They've stuffed it up, and it's pointless. You can do some speed runs with it. You may even get a little bit of fun, maybe just bashing around off-road, but As far as jumping goes, it's pointless to try and jump this truck on 3S because by the time the throttle actually kicks in and you start to get some wheel speed to lift the nose up, for example, it's too late. The truck has already nose-ended on the ground because you don't have that responsiveness that you get on the 2S. So on 2S, with the 4-pole brushless motor and geared correctly, this truck actually gets up and going. However, when you first take it out of the box, you're going to find that this thing is incredibly slow. I think it did about 40 kilometers an hour was top speed on 2S, which is about 25 miles. And I think I clocked it at about 50 kilometers an hour, which is about 31 or 32 miles an hour on 3S. I mean, that for $300 for a 4-pole brushless motor and an 80 MPSC, I am sorry, but that is inexcusable in 2015. I'm sure that there are brushed motors out there that you can get from a ready to run that will actually be faster than that. That is ridiculously slow. The truck is stupendously undergeared, and I cannot comprehend why anybody would undergear an RC like this with such a good brushless combo in there. Yes, the settings on the ESC on 3S are completely wrong, but the combo itself, if they had the settings correct, this would actually be a half decent combo and it would work fairly well on this truck. But there are a few other issues aside from that. First off, when I took the truck out of the box, it was very bouncy and it felt as though like there was no oil in the shocks. What I found though is when I tried to remove the shocks and find out what was going on, two of the shocks actually fell apart in my hand. They were actually diagonally positioned. I think it was my rear left and my front right kind of just fell apart. I took the rear left out of the truck, and as I was trying to remove the spring to kind of disassemble the shock, I ended up with the shock shaft in one hand and with the shock body in the other, kind of stunned and looking at it. And the reason for that is because at the end of the shock shaft there is a thread where your piston is supposed to sit, and there's a little lock nut that's supposed to hold the piston in place. That lock nut was floating around inside the shock body. Same thing happened with the other shock. As I was removing it from the truck, the actual shock shaft was left on the A-arm, and I was left with the shock body in my hand. Same problem. The other two shocks, one of them had the nut basically just hand tightened on, so I could actually move it with my fingers. The other one, it was barely hanging on. So if I had sort of moved the truck around a bit, or even if I tried to use it, guaranteed that little lock nut would have fallen off as well. So whoever's building these shocks in the assembly line, I think needs to look for another job because that's just poor quality. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where the truck comes from, what brand it is. If you're paying $300 US for an RC, or any type of product, really, it could be a toaster, it doesn't matter. You expect it to be assembled correctly, and unfortunately this was not assembled correctly, and for that money I was expecting a lot better, and it kind of straight away this truck started off on a very bad note. Then of course when I pulled the trigger for the first time on 2S and saw the speed, it was a bigger letdown again. As I began to use the truck, the shocks were leaking. They kind of jam. I mean, you can see here that it's kind of staying up, and then I push down and it stays down. They don't really flow very well. Jumping the truck, incredibly nose heavy. You have to be on the throttle constantly when you're in midair just to try and keep the truck level, let alone trying to correct it. It's very difficult to jump and drive. Now, some of that can be tuned. I did go with 40 weight shock oil on the front and 30 on the back. And in the last running video that I did with the truck, where I did RC Race Wars, it did perform a little bit better. I was actually enjoying driving the truck. But it still continued to, it still wanted to nosedive constantly. Best advice I can give anybody is swap out the spur gear, which I'm going to go into another problem here. The truck comes standard with a 62 tooth spur gear, and they give you an optional 54 tooth spur gear. Pinion is 11 tooth, which is very small. So you swap out the spur gear, and the truck has a considerable amount more speed, and it becomes a little bit more drivable, especially on 2S. 3S, you still have the throttle curve issue, but on 2S it does become a lot better to drive. However, in swapping the spur gear, I actually managed to disintegrate both the diff casing and my spur gear because they are both made out of very, very soft plastic, which is a really bad idea on a center diff. Speaking of which, the center diff is minuscule. It is tiny, it's very, very small. It only has 2 spider gears inside, which makes it susceptible to wear and tear. It doesn't really work that as evenly as some of the larger diffs with 4 spider gears inside. You can't actually modify it, unfortunately. As far as I could tell, even if you try to do some homemade mods and put 4 spider gears in there, I don't think it can be done. So in the attempt of trying to swap spur gears, I managed to completely stuff it up. I mean, they have these tiny, thin little screws, and you have to be very, very careful in tightening the new spur gear on, because just the slightest little bit and the screw will go straight through the spur gear and just damage everything. The diff is actually sealed with a little paper washer, so it's all very cheap, it's all very flimsy, and I ended up having to order a new diff center diff housing as well as a new set of spur gears. When I swapped it over the second time, reassembled the diff, I managed to do it right this time. I was very careful to really, you got to be so delicate with rebuilding that center diff, it's ridiculous. So that's another problem, that's an inherent problem, you can't fix that, and that to me leaves a fairly weak point on the truck, which is in the drive line, and that's one of the things that you always want to be as solid as possible on any RC, regardless of what genre it is, whether it's a buggy, whether it's a short course truck, whether it's a monster truck. You want your drive line to be solid, you want good diffs, you want good drive shafts, you don't want those things to fail. Unfortunately, I think this truck is very susceptible to center diff failure, as well as stripping that center spur gear, because it's made out of incredibly soft plastic, which just shouldn't be. So that's a big letdown. With the nosediving, as I said, I tried to by the way, the body, before I move on to the nosediving thing, the body is okay, it's held up, it's end of the bargain, but it is very flimsy. It kind of overhangs the rear bumper, and I can't quite understand why. So it's copped quite a lot of damage in the back here, and I'll bring this up a bit closer for you guys to see. So it's copped quite a lot of damage in the back. I also have a hole, or a couple of holes in the on the bonnet, and I have no idea how I got those holes, but it has them. But other than that, it's fine. Now, if you ever look at my chassis here, I've got my ESC mounted on the receiver box. Originally, the ESC was actually mounted at the front here. Now, I did this to try and shift some weight to the rear of the truck to prevent some of this nosediving, along with tuning the shocks to try and shift some weight into the rear half of the truck. I don't really know if it helped, to be honest with you. It probably did, but the truck just wants to nosedive. It constantly wants to land like this, and I've driven a lot of RCs. I've got other short course trucks, and they don't do that. This one does it, and I can't quite understand why. Now, wheel speed is one issue. If you don't have enough wheel speed, the truck will tend to want to probably tip forward a little bit. So the low gearing, the lack of wheel speed will obviously create that problem, as well as your suspension tuning. Another thing I'm going to point out here as a bit of an issue is the front bumper. Because of all the nosediving, because it tends to want to land forward, my front bumper has received an exceptional amount of damage. It's barely hanging on. I did buy a spare one when I got the new spur gears and everything else, a new diff for the truck, but I just haven't installed it yet. I want to try and suss out the problem with the nosediving. If I can get that tuned out, and once I feel comfortable with the truck, then I'll put the new bumper on, because then I'll know that I'm not going to be damaging that one as quickly as I did the first one, of course. Everything is waterproof, of course, so that is actually a good thing. The 4-pole brushless motor actually has a lot more power than the ESC allows it to. I mean, as I said, once you gear this truck up, it does get up and go. Currently, I've got the 54 tooth spur gear in here and I'm running a 17 tooth pinion, and temperatures are at the high end of safe, but they are still safe. Running off-road on 2S, this truck really boogies now. It goes very, very well. Of course, on 3S, it's not really ideal to be running this sort of gearing off-road or doing anything like that, because you're really going to be straining out these electronics, and the motor at the end of the day can only do so much. Before I forget, I will touch on the tires as well. The tires for this truck are not the ones that are on here. These are the Proline trenches. These are the tires that actually came with the truck. When you take the truck out of the box and you drive it with the current setup that it has, which is very slow, these tires actually grip fine. And the reason is because you're really not generating that much wheel speed for these to be a problem. So they'll actually hook up okay in most terrains. Once you start to gear up the truck, you're going to need new tires because the tires just can't keep up with the power of the truck, or with the speed of the truck rather. There is one other problem though, and that is that the truck comes with all plastic links. Now I can't quite understand why, but there is a little bit of negative camber here on the front wheels, and basically, you know, the front wheels are kind of tilting a little bit outwards, and that means that when you corner the truck, you actually start to wear the outside of your tires on the front. The rears aren't so much of an issue, they're actually pretty good, but the front are a bit of a problem, especially if you're going to be running on the road, or you're going to be running on anything that's sort of a hard compact surface. You're going to want to invest in some adjustable links to adjust the camber accordingly, because I noticed that on the stock tires there actually was some wear on the outer side of the tire, obviously from cornering and so forth, and even on the road. Yeah, they wear a little bit on the outside. So if you're going to stick with the plastic links, try and remember to rotate these maybe every half a dozen packs or so. Rotate your tires around, that way you get some nice even wear. But the tires in stock form, they're okay, they'll hold on, of course, but once you start to really put some power down and gear the truck up, you're going to be up for some new tires. What else can I tell you that's a bit of a problem with this truck? As far as durability goes, I mean, the front bumper is a terrible design. It's got some sort of hinge on the front here, and it kind of wants to fold on itself. I don't quite understand who designed this or why they did it this way, but it's a terrible idea. They need to really fix this, because I can even move it and straighten it up just by moving the bumper with my hands. No matter how hard you tighten up the screws, there's always going to be movement. A very cool thing that I did like, before I forget as well, is that these body posts actually move. So you can actually, you can hear the little clicks there. They actually move a little bit forwards and backwards. What that means is that when you do take a heavy hit on the lid of the truck, rather than these body posts sort of bending or breaking, they'll actually move with the body, and they'll allow a little bit of flexibility. And I think that's actually a pretty clever idea. I don't like the fact that you have to cut the body posts to suit the body. I would have preferred that these were actually kind of coming through somehow, and you adjust the body post as a whole rather than the supports of the body post, because there's nothing wrong with my post at the moment, but if I want to swap bodies and put a different body on here, I may need to adjust the supports, and if I had cut the body posts to suit the original body, then I would be up for some new body posts. So just minor little things like this that really create a bit of an annoyance on the truck. The rear shock tower, I managed to bend it. However, I do have a replacement. I have bent this one back, so it's kind of okay, but it's still got a bit of a kink in it. So I do have a replacement, which I'm going to be changing over very soon. I've also got a couple of other upgrades on the truck that I'm going to try out to see if you can actually make something good out of this, what is otherwise a mess. So I'm going to try and see if we can actually get a decent truck out of this, because I do feel that there is potential here. However, even if you own one of these or you're contemplating getting one of these and you think, no, this actually has some good things, you know, there's the Tower Hobbies warranty, it has the decent remote, it has a good layout on the chassis and everything else, you know, I'm still going to give this a go. You have to take into account that if you're planning on throwing money at it, let me ask you this question, you know, why would you? When there were so many other RCs out there, such as the Pro SC that you see behind me from Team Associated, which is a mere $30 more and is such a much better truck, and you don't really have to do too much to that one. You don't have to put as much effort into tuning that truck, into making that truck decent as you do with this one. Even the DHK Hunter that you see behind me here, which I think is about $250 US or thereabouts, it's about the same price. It's in the same realm. You know, it's a direct competitor to this. I find that to be a far better truck as well. It just drives a lot better, and it's just a much more durable truck and has better speed. I mean, and for what it is, this here just doesn't compete quite as well as it should. And I hate saying that. I'll be honest with you guys, I really do hate saying that, because I am a big fan of Tower Hobbies. I've been shopping with Tower Hobbies for a long time. I've spent thousands of dollars there. A lot of the RCs that you see have come from Tower Hobbies, and they've always given me excellent service whenever I have a query, whenever there is a mishap with you know, one of my orders or anything like that. They've always given me excellent service, and I'm a big fan of them. I love shopping there. It's as simple as that. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people that have shopped with Tower Hobbies in the past that can echo those same comments. But as far as their product goes, as far as this particular truck goes, I have to say that this is not worth the purchase. It is not worth the money. I mean, if it was about $199 or even less than that, I would probably consider it, because you'd have to throw a bit of time and money into it to really make it decent. But as it is, I'm sorry, but this is not a good truck. It just isn't a good truck. It's not tuned correctly out of the box. It doesn't drive very well. It's incredibly slow. It has some you know, durability issues. It has drivability issues. It's not a decent RC. And aside from the warranty that you get from Tower Hobbies, which is not applicable to everybody across the world, of course, because you know, you have to send the parts back, there's really not a lot here that really would draw people to this truck, in my personal opinion. You take from that what you will. I will finish off though, before I forget, that a friend of mine recently pointed out to me that this truck, or this chassis rather, has actually been found on the Maverick brand, whether that is the brand or the name of the RC. But if you look up Maverick, I think you'll find this exact same chassis. So just something to keep in mind, because it looks like it's a bit of a rebrand that we're seeing here. All that aside, the Tower Hobbies Cutback from Tower Hobbies, in my personal opinion, I would just skip over this one and look at something else. If you're up for a challenge and you're prepared to put some money into it and some time, go for your life. But as far as you know, comparing to some of the other products that are out there on the market, no, this is not as good as it should be. I will say. That is it from me, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. Please be sure to check out the video description for more links on the truck. I'll have a Tower Hobbies link in there as well if you want to check out some of the other specifications, if you want to buy one yourself and give one of these trucks a go. There'll also be a link in there to my Facebook page, which will of course keep you a couple of steps ahead of what goes on here on YouTube. That is it from me, guys. Thank you again for watching, and I will speak to you next time.